still on the theme of religion, there's a particular shrine that you've got a close attachment to. And you spoke before also about prayer and about making the words up, but there's a very structured prayer in combination with this shrine that means a lot to you. It's Lourdes is the shrine, and specifically the Rosary. How does the Rosary help you?
The Rosary helps me in two ways. One, it helps me communicate. Sorry? Oh, hey! Yeah. One, it helps me in two ways. One, it helps me by praying the Rosary and trying to concentrate when I'm saying it. And then I feel the healing power of what I'm worried about at the time and how it leads me into other thoughts with confidence. The other thing it does for me, it makes me appreciate other people that weren't from my stables. My stables, I was brought up religion from my grandparents to my parents and their grandparents. So there's a long line, and you can obviously imagine how hard it was for me to translate that to my children in the modern day. It wasn't really the modern day in the 60s and the 70s. We were still in the dark ages. You weren't allowed in a Protestant church. You didn't really want you playing with Protestants. It was a little bit iffy, and then the priest every now and again will remind you in the church that all the other churches have got it wrong, we've got it right. So it was still the dark ages in a lot. So the Rosary is very powerful, but it makes me appreciate people that have never heard it, because I personally think I'm quite religious, or people tell me I am, you know. But I think the Rosary is a bit of an overload. Okay, if you're struggling and you want power, and you want extra power, and you want to lose yourself in a prayer, then the Rosary is good for two reasons. One is that there's a healing power, and also helps you with whatever the problem is at the time. The golden rule, of course, which some people can't understand or think it's too good to be true, like I said before, is that God will only give you what's good for you. So you could be praying for a certain situation, for someone to live, but God might think it's time for that person to go. You might think that someone shouldn't get ill or should get the job. But then God might know better what's better down the road, might get a better job, whatever. So God has the last word, and that's the understanding of prayer, that you have to have that. Now, some people don't want that. They want God, and they want to do the gambling, and they want to drink, and they want to womanize, and they want God as well. But He's made it quite clear, God, that you can't serve two gods. If you want God, you got His deal. Now, Our Lady's deal is the Rosary, and the deal is that you pray, and the first part of the Hail Mary is praising Our Lady. As our headmaster, Mr. Morgan from St. Christopher's, used to say, the first part of the Hail Mary is praising Our Lady. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee, blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. And the second part of it, you're asking us something. Hail Mary, Mother of Grace, pray for us sinners now at the end of our death. You're asking, you praise it for the first half to butter it up, and then you ask for something. And you do that all the way through the Rosary with the Our Father, the Lord's Prayer, and the Glory Be. And then you're supposed to do 10 of them, and then another 10, and then another 10. And then you have the joyful, the sorrowful. So I'm sorry, but my brain is not made that way. I found out, and I've had it okayed, that I can pray to music. I can pray while I'm watching the telly. I can pray when I'm driving. It's just the only way I can do it. I've tried praying, and my brain just goes. So if I'm like that, and I'm supposed to be, religious person, then how can I sell it to other people? Because that's what we're supposed to do, and that's what, in general terms, what Lourdes is about. It's praying for sinners, praying for the sinners, which is hard. Why should we? Why should we go to church on a Sunday when we're allowed to, and pray for all the people lying in bed or reading the news of the world with a bacon butty? And we're in prayer, we're in the church getting slagged off. Are we doing enough? And they're all lying in bed. But that's what the deal is. They want us to pray for conversion of sinners, not pray for sinners as sinners, but the conversion. So they come down to our way of thinking. And then we've got more chance, as John Lennon said, living as one. Yeah, I mentioned John Lennon with kid gloves because he did and meant a lot to me, and I think he did an awful lot of God's work through his work. And it might be a little bit of a coincidence, but all my Alpha courses, and I was on the committee with churches together, and my wife's brother was a Benedictine monk in Ampleforth. They all say there's no such thing as coincidence. And when I look at all my pictures, and I'll show you them next time you're down, Damian, but you can see it in the book tonight before you go to bed, the pictures of Lourdes, there's always a big blue sky with that little bit of white cloud. Now, not every sky has that. Sometimes it's dark, sometimes it's overcast. Now, on these particular pictures, there's always the light-coloured sky and then a little bit of fluffy cloud on all my photographs, every one of them from Lourdes. Okay? Now, John Lennon's Imagine album is exactly the same. He's got, I can see it from here where I am now, he's got a big blue sky, and then he's got a bit of fluffy cloud. You remember that, Damian, do you?
I do,
Yeah?
when he's got his glasses on.
So, pardon?
Yeah, he's got his glasses
What was
on.
that?
He's got his glasses on. Now I'm just
Yeah,
picturing
well done,
the cover.
Damian. Yeah, right. So, I mean, that doesn't mean an awful lot to a lot of people, but to me it does, because that song haunted me for many years until Father Francis, the singing friar, said, how are you doing with your songs, Kevin? I said, well, I'd love to record Imagine, I'd love to sing it. And he said, well, what's stopping you? And I said, well, it says, imagine there's no heaven at the beginning. And I don't like to imagine there's no heaven. And I think in some ways it was not quite right that he said that. And he said, well, why don't you change it and sing Imagine There Is a Heaven, and then sing everything else? And the song makes a lot more sense, Imagine There Is a Heaven, and then go through with the rest of it. Because imagine there's no possession is a good point, and then no countries, that's a good point. And it would be up to debate, and what's good about it is that the Bible's a bit like that. Sometimes to read the Bible without a crash helmet or a safety belt on can be quite dangerous. It's quite powerful stuff, and some of it doesn't make a lot of sense, but in Bible groups you could make a lot of sense, and you could argue till the cows come home that John Lennon got it right or got it wrong. Imagine no religion and possession and everybody would live as one. I'm not sure they would, but anyway, it's up for argument's sake. So what I'd say is that you need a structure. So whatever you live in, whatever guidelines, you need a structure. And Lourdes is generally about looking after the sick, and some of the bishops and the priests, when we start our church services, they start off by thanking the sick for coming along to be the centre of our prayer and our actions for the day, to take them out, to make sure they're watered and fed and looked after, nice meals, and I know you're smiling, David, because I said watered and fed, and making them the centre of the pilgrimage. And then it seems strange to say to pray for sinners, but it's not pray for sinners, it's pray for the conversion of sinners. And it's said, I've read it in some of the scriptures, my wife used to go mad at me because I couldn't tell her exactly what scripture and what page it was, and who said it, like the Bible is broken up. But I remembered it all, but I don't remember exactly what part it was in. Not necessarily in that order, Damian. I remember it saying that heaven rejoices when one person comes back to God. Now, I could be praying all day and go to Mass and say the Rosary, and God probably just acknowledge me and say, well done or thanks. But when somebody who hasn't been to the church, but hasn't gone back to God, like the prodigal son, suddenly goes back to God or turns to God, then they rejoice in heaven. There's a party, if you like. So that part of it's strange, but then it all fits in. That if you can get most people all singing off the same hymn book, then that's what Our Lady is trying to achieve. It's okay all us being as one, looking after the sick and being together, but can we get a bit more on board? And then we go back to people nursing or doing good, feeling fulfilled, not happy, or it's not their life achievements, but feel fulfilled. Now, for someone to feel fulfilled looking after the sick, that is beautiful. Now, a friend of mine who lost his wife through cancer, Hank it was, said to me, how about your God? Just the night before the funeral, he asked me to come and stay with him, and I said, he's okay at the moment. And he said, well, why has he done this to my wife? Is he a sicko? I said, what do you mean is he a sicko? Got all these people dying of cancer, is that what he wants? I said, no, he has a plan for you, and he has a plan for Hillary, and he will reveal his plan when we pass over. This is only 80 years, this life, or 70 years and 70 years or so. Give or take 10 or 20 years, I said, but then you've got the rest of him to explain and to make things up of eternity, which is just an amazing amount of time you could never envisage. I said, he's not a sicko. I said, he's got a plan. I said, but I understand what you mean, and I can see where you're coming from. So I accept what you're saying, but you just have to trust him, and you'll have to trust me, because I want what's best for you, and we'll have to see how things pan out. So remember that, and it does look a bit iffy to the naked eye, that people are sick in wheelchairs and got all these ailments. But my father told me at a young age, when I said, why does God allow people to be sick or in wheelchairs? And my father said, well, it brings love out in people, Kevin. It brings love out. It brings love that you wouldn't necessarily see or feel. And I sense that at Lourdes. I see all these people from all over the world being pushed in wheelchairs, some of them lying down, some of them broken, leaning over, some of them sitting up, and the most beautiful women from all over the world, nurses of all ages, looking attractive, not in a sexy way or like that, just attractive, smart, doing the job they're there for, from all over the world, to the beautiful singing from all over the world, and lighted candles to finish off the day. And you do feel as if you're in heaven. I actually feel as if it's the doorway to heaven, and I can see myself not wanting to go into heaven. I want to stay there, because that's how beautiful it feels. And the conversion of sinners can be done in many ways. It can be to teach, it can be through depression, it can be through being ill and then getting better. It can find God through a person, or through religion, or through getting through the illness. Or if you can't, like I do, put my foot on it now and again, trying to turn people to God, you can do it by example. People will watch you, and they wonder why you're always smiling. And I can remember in some of the pubs I've run, some of the lads who took the drugs and did the gambling and went with loads of women used to come up to me privately and say, what are you on? I'd say, pardon? What are you on? I'd say, I'm not on anything. You know, I go to church on a Sunday and I try to look after my kids, and it's not an easy life. I'm not on anything. So that is a compliment in a way. What are you on? So that's another possibility for the name of the book, Damian. So as a friend used to say to me, Celia, and I visit her now and again, her husband's got cancer, and she used to say she was high on life. She was high on life, she enjoyed life. My father used to say that as well. Isn't it lovely life? And I wonder what he was on about. You stand there in his vest in the morning eating burnt toast. I said, the toast burnt? He said, I know I burnt it myself. I said, why is that? He said, because when I was on sentry duty in the army all them years ago, I'd be dreaming of toast. Even the burnt toast I used to throw out. So I won't even actually burn it myself now, just to have it. It made me laugh, but he remember saying it wasn't life beautiful. And I was thinking to myself, not really, I've got 3 screaming kids, I've got a job around my neck, got to get budgets and figures. And then when I think back now, it makes me smile. So Lourdes, from burnt toast, another possibility for the title of the book. And Lourdes is a special place, but I don't want it to be like the Masons. Oh, you said it, the Masons. It's not a private organisation, it's something to be shared through the Rosary. But if I teach anybody the Rosary, if I say the Rosary with anybody, especially if they're not from the church, I'll just say 1 decade. I might be going to somebody's house tomorrow to say the Rosary for somebody who's got somebody not well. And I'm going to say 1 decade. I'm not saying 10. Joyful, sorrowful. I'm sorry, but without being too over the top, I think Our Lady understands me, that digestible chunks is what's needed for anybody who's not from our stables.